History remembers Genghis Khan as the unstoppable warlord who united the steppe and carved the largest land empire the world had ever seen. His name thundered from the Pacific to the gates of Europe, his banners feared like omens of death. But what most stories leave buried is the darker system that drove his rise. Behind the heroic image and battlefield genius lay a cold design, one that weaponized sex, fear, and bloodlines as instruments of conquest. Every marriage, every birth, every woman taken from a defeated tribe was part of a plan to erase enemies and breed loyalty. To understand how one man ruled half the earth, you have to look past the myth and into the private laws, secret codes, and brutal rituals that held his world together. What you find there isn't just war, it's domination built on control over life itself. This is the story of how Genghis Khan turned sexual power into political strategy, how his desire became a weapon, and how entire nations vanished into his bloodline. Before the world called him Genghis Khan, he was Temujin, a boy orphaned by betrayal, driven by hunger, and consumed by vengeance. The tribe that destroyed his family, the Tatars, had poisoned his father and left his kin to starve. Years later, when Temujin rose as a conqueror in 1202, his revenge came not as rage, but as policy. When the last Tatar warriors were captured, he gave an order that chilled even his generals. Every male taller than the axle pin of a wagon, barely 3 feet, was to be executed where he stood. It was not just slaughter, it was erasure. The men were wiped out. The women were seized and divided among his soldiers, their beauty now a reward, their wombs the property of the state. Temujin himself took 2 Tatar sisters, Yasugan and Yeswi, into his camp as wives. This was not uncontrolled violence. It was a calculated formula. Destroy the fathers, claim the mothers, raise children loyal to the conqueror. The Tatar bloodline was erased in a single generation. What began as vengeance soon became policy. It was the birth of a system that bound conquest, sex, and power into one unstoppable engine of domination. Once Temujin discovered that domination through bloodlines worked, he turned it into a rule of empire. Years earlier, the Merkit clan had raided his camp and captured his wife, Berta, a humiliation that burned into memory. When he finally crushed the Merkits, he showed no mercy. Their chief's widow, Tagutai, was seized and given to his son, Ogedei, as a reward. That captive would later rule as regent of the Mongol Empire itself, commanding generals and princes. The same pattern followed with the Kerete tribe, former allies who had turned against him. After defeating them in 1203, Temujin took the noblewoman Sokoktani Beki and married her to his youngest son, Tolui. From her came 4 grandsons, Munka, Kublai, Hulagu, and Arik Boke, each destined to rule vast dominions from China to Persia. Through these marriages, he didn't just expand territory, he planted dynasties. Each union erased an enemy name and replaced it with his own legacy. The strategy was brutally clear: kill the men, take the women, breed the future. The conquered became the conqueror's family, and rebellion was smothered before it began. It was not lust. It was governance through the body, a system that turned birth into conquest and marriage into empire. By 1206, Temujin's power had no rival. On the banks of the Onon River, the great Kurultai gathered the steppe's chiefs and named him Genghis Khan, ruler of all Mongols. But what followed that coronation was not just a new title, it was a new order. He introduced a secret code known as the Yasa, a set of unwritten laws that reached into every corner of Mongol life. It governed not only war and tribute, but the most private acts of the people. The Yasa demanded loyalty above all. Disobedience was death, no matter the rank. Among its strictest decrees were those concerning sex and marriage. Adultery, even by consent, meant execution. No man could touch another's wife. 2 unmarried lovers found together faced the same fate. To the Mongols, this wasn't morality, it was control. The empire's stability depended on discipline, not desire. Persian chronicler Atta Malik Juvaini wrote that even noblemen trembled before these rules. A single mistake could bring instant execution. From the humblest herder to the queen herself, every life was bound by this invisible chain. The Yasa was Genghis Khan's true weapon, a law that commanded bodies, ruled emotions, and made loyalty a matter of survival. The Yasa did not stop at love or loyalty. It reached into every act of daily life. Under Genghis Khan, even small mistakes could mean death. A soldier who ignored an item dropped by the man ahead of him could be executed on the spot. Relieving oneself in a river or washing clothes in a stream was punishable by death. To the outside world, it seemed like senseless cruelty, but for the Mongols, it was survival. Polluted water could kill an army faster than arrows. One careless soldier could doom thousands. The Yasa turned obedience into instinct, fear into order. From the battlefield to the bedroom, every gesture was calculated and controlled. A man who stole a horse or deserted his post was slain without hesitation. Sodomy, cowardice, or betrayal, each was met with the same merciless punishment. The Mongol army became a single living organism, precise, unbreakable, bound by law and terror. And behind that discipline stood one purpose: to keep the steppe united and the empire expanding. Genghis Khan didn't rule through love or devotion. He ruled through the certainty that one mistake could end a life. It was this absolute control that transformed nomads into conquerors and tribes into an empire. Behind Genghis Khan's army stood a second empire, his household. It was not a home. It was a state in motion. At its center were his 4 great wives, each ruling over her own traveling palace known as an Ordo. First among them was Berta, his lifelong companion and mother of his principal heirs. After victories, he added 3 more senior wives, Kulan from the Merkits and the Tatar sisters, Yesugen and Yesui. Each Ordo was a self-contained kingdom with its own servants, soldiers, and herds that numbered in the tens of thousands. Persian historians described them as rolling cities, where trade, politics, and ceremony moved across the steppe like drifting capitals. Beneath these queens were dozens of lesser wives and hundreds of concubines, divided into groups of 30 or 40. By his final years, Genghis Khan's household is said to have included nearly 500 women. Eunuchs from conquered lands guarded and managed these courts, ensuring loyalty and silence. The women were far from powerless. They advised, negotiated, and above all, produced heirs. Each son born in these Ordos represented continuity, power, and legitimacy. Love was irrelevant. What mattered was expansion, lineage, and control. Even within his own tent, Genghis ruled through the same formula that built his empire: discipline, possession, and fear. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, his empire stretched from the Yellow Sea to the edge of Europe. But even in death, his system of control lived on. Power, wealth, and women passed through his family like property. His third son, Ogedei, inherited the title of Great Khan, but also part of his father's household, including several of Genghis's surviving wives. This was the ancient steppe custom of levirate marriage, expanded to imperial scale. A son could inherit his father's widows, everyone except his own mother. The practice horrified outsiders, like the Franciscan envoy John of Plano Carpini, who wrote with disbelief that a Mongol man might marry all his father's wives and concubines, save the one who gave him life. But to the Mongols, it was simple logic. A woman came with wealth, servants, and political influence. To pass her outside, the clan meant losing power. By keeping these women within the bloodline, alliances and riches stayed contained. Ogedei continued the custom, passing wives to generals as gifts of loyalty. His successors followed suit. With every generation, marriages and inheritances bound the ruling families tighter, sealing their world from outsiders. What began as law had become ritual, an endless cycle of possession that kept the empire intact long after its founder's death. The clearest glimpse into Genghis Khan's method came during his campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire in 1219. What began as a diplomatic insult turned into total annihilation. When a Mongol trade caravan was seized and its envoys murdered, Genghis declared vengeance not just on the Shah, but on his entire realm. What followed was conquest transformed into terror. City after city was wiped from the map. At Bukhara, Samarkand, and Nishapur, entire populations were driven outside the walls. Craftsmen and scholars separated to be enslaved, the rest condemned to die. Before the killing began came humiliation. Chroniclers wrote of women raped publicly before their families, degradation used as a weapon to break resistance forever. When Nishapur fell, vengeance reached its peak. The death of a royal son-in-law sparked a massacre so complete that, according to Persian historians, even the dogs and cats were slain. Pyramids of skulls marked the ruins where cities once stood. Yet behind this horror was calculation. Sexual violence, mass killing, and forced marriages all served one purpose: to erase old identities and breed obedience into the new order. Through terror and control of the body, Genghis Khan fused fear with fertility, creating an empire where bloodlines became weapons. The land healed, but the memory of his power, cold, total, and human, never faded. So, what do you think? Was Genghis Khan a genius who built an empire through strategy, or a monster who ruled through fear, sex, and blood? Every name erased, every tribe absorbed, every woman taken. It wasn't just conquest. It was calculation. And even after 8 centuries, the shadow of that system still stretches across history. If this story made you see the Mongol Empire in a way you never have before, then don't leave just yet. There are dozens more hidden tales waiting, of rulers, lovers, and the dark laws that shaped our world. Hit like if this story shook you. Subscribe if you want the next one, because the next chapter dives even deeper into what empires tried to bury. And tell me in the comments, was Genghis Khan a visionary or just another tyrant who used lust as his weapon? Your thoughts keep this channel alive. Your click keeps history breathing. Stay curious, stay dark, and I'll see you in the next story.